Hello, hello, hello. I'm your host, Stephanie Martinez Rivera, and you are listening to the Joy Found Here podcast. I am obsessed with reminding my fellow mamas, queens, badass babes, ladies, and girls that perfection is just a word, not a lifestyle. Multitasking is overrated. Comparison is a theft of happiness. And yes, you can put yourself first. Oh, and by the way, for optimum results, you should. I'm a New York girl from a small town, part-time badass, proud mama bear times 3. I've seen 60 full turns of the sun. I've learned the importance of how kindness begins with you and your self-talk. Join us each week as we help you navigate both the messy and the magical season of this crazy ride called life. Real stories that remind us to reclaim your power. The sun does come out after the shitstorm. A good cry can be cleansing, and we really don't know who sits on top of the mountain of judgment. Sit back, plug in, fill up your cup. This is your time. Remember, you've always had the power. Welcome to Joy Found Here. Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Joy Found Here podcast. I have been waiting all day for this. We're talking to she's a lot of things. And most recently, a newly published author with a debut book. But before we get to that, because there's a lot of in her short life that this girl has to talk about. So I don't know, maybe she was a model and maybe she owned a business and maybe she's a photographer and then writes a book. The story near and dear to my heart. So we are going to talk to author Caroline Helsing, whose new book is called Unapologetic Tales of the Original Party Crasher. And that is her heartfelt story of a daughter processing the loss of her mother. I just can't wait. So first, thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Okay, so we always start, I just want to dive in, but I'm going to just take a breath and contain a little excitement. But we do always start with, just tell us something about you, tell us your story wherever you'd like to start it.
Well, first of all, I'm just as excited to talk with you. And I have to tell you, I love the accent. It reminds me of my childhood, my mother from New York City. And I want you to keep talking.
Oh, you mean the New York thing? Okay.
I love it. So I am not from New York. I'm actually originally from Hawaii. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii. I would say 2 days before my 23rd birthday, I had to get off the rock. I couldn't take it anymore. Although I loved growing up in Hawaii, I was ready for new experiences and continue in the field that I started in Hawaii, which was acting and modeling and that whole thing. I lived in LA for a few years. I'm going to take you way back.
Okay, let's go.
I had gotten a new mattress, a new bed that was a little higher than my old one. Mm-hmm. And I had a little Lhasa Apso at the time who used to jump up and sleep with me, and he couldn't get up anymore. So I made a little step for him to get up, and I've always been entrepreneurial. And so friends kind of found out about it, and I was like, well, maybe I can make this into a little business.
And so, how old were you?
I was 29, 30.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And it was right around that time also when I was kind of like itching for a change. Yeah. I was actually working with a friend of mine on a candle line. We thought maybe we'd go into the candle business.
Yeah.
And, we would meet up throughout the week to design our line sheets and all that. So we were actually already kind of working together. We had formed an LLC. And when I made this dog step, one day I started, I don't know how this happened, but I came up with an idea for a t-shirt for a dog to wear that said, "Bitches love me." Because, I had a male dog and it was kind of funny, and we started cracking up. One thing led to it. Basically that then took over the candle line, and we we created a company that had like 250 sayings by the end of it. We had like, basically, what would it be if your dog could talk? What's their personality?
Right. What would he say? Oh my God. So much fun.
Read everything under the sun. And it was a perfect time we hit, during the whole Paris Hilton era, literally like the time when all of a sudden you started seeing all these
little dogs as accessories. Sure. Absolutely.
And stuff. So it was pretty successful. I had it for about 10 and a half years. I wound up taking it over from my partner and then sold it. I think it was 2013. And I needed a break. I mean, I had lived through a lot of stuff happened. And, you got 2000, and that's my dog.
And that's a dog. And that's fine. We've got him too. Barking on cue. No worries. No worries.
He's getting in here. Good. Anyway, so yeah, I needed a break. And so I started volunteering. I wound up getting involved with the Rotary group. So I was Rotarian here in Newport Beach. And I wound up traveling with these mobile medical clinics. We would go into, we went to Peru, we went into the Amazon jungle. I was one of 4 people just going into the Amazon jungle, which was an incredible experience. India, where we administered we were the last group to administer polio vaccination via droplets.
Oh, wow.
Before they went to injection. So yeah, we did that. Mexico, all over the place. So, and the reason I mention is through my photography, I would, document it. So I would document it with photos, and then I started writing, and I would submit these articles to the local papers, and I kind of ignited my love of writing. I've always written my whole life, really, just journals and whatnot.
So you were almost a travel blogger for print.
For philanthropic things. So I write about the Rotarian, things happening in the community. I interviewed Olympians. I mean, it was really exciting. I loved the writing part. Cut to my mother, who I was very, very, very close to, passed away. And that was in 2019 in January, actually January 1st on New Year's Day.
What was her name?
Well, foreign Leatrice, but everybody loved to call her Latrice or Lee. And then she changed it to Lisa because she thought that was a little more sophisticated. So yeah, Latrice, Lisa. Yeah.
Latrice.
Yeah.
Very, very pretty.
Thank you. Pretty. Yeah. I it's so unique. I've never met a Leatrice or Latrice, but yeah. So she had a nickname as well. Her nickname was Harlow, after Jean Harlow. And actually New York Post gave her that nickname, which was almost the name of the book. I almost named the book Harlow. But I know this is a very long answer to your original.
We've got nothing but time here. Don't even worry about that. I want to know more about her and how we got there.
She was, originally from, born and raised New Yorker, loved New York. Just literally had a love affair with that city. I mean, so for her to live on an island for 36 years was a feat, like it was a testament to the love she had for my father, because they moved there for his work, and she thought, I'll just be here for a couple years, and cut to almost.
So went from New York City to Hawaii.
Well, went from New York City to Arizona, where they had my brother, and they were there maybe about a year or so. And then, they were newlyweds. It was everything. Life was just an exciting adventure. And yeah, so much so they really did think they were going to come back soon, because they put all their belongings in storage. And I think it was on the 34th or 35th year there for them, I discovered that they had things in storage.
Oh, no.
So I surprised them and had it all sent to them. And I remember that day was so exciting. I was like opening up, like everything was wrapped in newspaper, but like newspaper from like almost 40 years ago. It was incredible. And then my mother, so sentimental, she'd keep these love notes that she wrote to my father, and all kinds of incredible things. And then like a year or two later, they moved to California. So of course, they had to bring it back with them.
That is so funny. So they were in Hawaii for, did you say 36 years?
They were in Hawaii for 36 years, long after I moved away to California. My mom was always very vocal about getting off the island. I mean, she missed the mainland. And I know secretly she really loved Hawaii. Actually, later. She was always very wistful. So once she was on the mainland, she was like, oh, it was God's country. I need to go back. And she would go back all the time. But yeah, I mean, I brought my father and brother into the company, my manufacturing company, and my dad worked with us for 3 years, and then he retired. And then everybody moved to Palm Springs. So that's where they wound up ending up. And that was not
Hawaii, not too shabby. Palm Springs, not too shabby. Yeah.
But no, I mean, to talk about the reason why I actually even wrote this book, I always knew there was a book inside of me. Literally, I mean, even from I think I was not even 10 years old. I remembered I remember thinking I would write a book, and I was always writing short stories, and English was my favorite subject in school, and all that. But I had no idea what it was going to be about. But I knew I was going to write something. So, I'm very much a proponent of putting out your intentions into the universe and for not caring what the how is. And that essentially that's what I did, because when I sold my company, I was doing photography, but I was searching for something more substantial. And through the volunteer work, I really wanted to feel like I was making a difference somehow, putting my mark, back in the world. I love being creative. Anyway, what happened was after my mother had passed, well, I'll back up again. When she was sick, I had promised her that I would take her back to all of her favorite places in New York. And I made good on that promise. And I essentially did that with her ashes.
Okay.
I revisited all of the places that she talked to me about in her youth. And it was a very cool, very therapeutic experience for me. And I wrote about it. So writing for me is a way to get out my feelings and just make sense of things and record things. And I just started writing just for the heck of it. I took a memoir class and decided to write about my mother. I just wrote a couple of excerpts, and I thought, this might be something. And then, COVID hit. So I was like, well, let me dive in. I mean, what else am I going to do? So it was probably a blessing in disguise, a silver lining, in that I really couldn't go and do anything. I couldn't be social as I usually am. And I treated it like a full-time job. I mean, I 7 days a week. And for me, it was a beautiful thing. Just, it made me feel like she was still with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always thinking about her.
Well, you're thinking about her, and that is half of it. That's why I asked what her name was. So you were born in Hawaii. Had you visited New York growing up?
Yes.
Okay. So you had gone back a few times and seen the city. And how old were you when you would come to New York?
Throughout my youth, I actually, before coming to California, I didn't know whether I was going to move to LA or if I was going to move to New York. And I trip to New York first, and then I actually write about that. It's pretty funny, but I wound up essentially using the West Coast. It's probably a nicer cross between LA was maybe a little bit cross between New York and Hawaii, so little baby steps.
True that, yeah, and at least a little warmer and drier than New York, and again the nice thing, me and native born, raised, still living here, looking to probably leave in the next few years. But every change of season, I'm like, and I'm on Long Island, and it's not the hustle. I mean, there's a lot of traffic, but it's not Manhattan for a reason. It was the country when we moved here 1,000 years ago. And I came here as a 5-year-old kid, and I'm 60, and I knew this is where I wanted. We just had such a great childhood from, just running around, fresh air, whatever it is. Plus, of course, our parents were hands off. They barely knew where we were, unlike today. But I just knew that I really wanted my kids to have that experience. And they have. And now they're older, and, one's already in North Carolina. One lives by the beach, and, lucky him. Nice to be Greg. And the other one is, we're trying to just figure this all out. It's fun. It is. But, sometimes you just get to that point where there's different out there, and, this checks all the boxes. but you can always you can make your memories somewhere else. Well, of course I need ocean. Of course I need beach. Like there's such a criteria, especially growing up by the water, that you have to have it. You absolutely.
I need to, I could not, I personally don't think I could ever live in an inland type of state. I could be by the coast. Otherwise I feel claustrophobic, and essentially it's probably just how you've grown up. It's what. So.
And then which part of Hawaii did you grow up in?
I grew up on Oahu. So in Hawaii Kai, and then
Because my goal, my ultimate retirement goal, is to build a family cow pound in Kauai. I'm just like, it's calling my name, beachfront, and then I'm thinking, maybe just a 1-bedroom. As long as it's on the beach, they can always come and stay somewhere else, and that'll be fine too. But definitely a dream and a goal. So let's talk about. I haven't finished the book, but I read this one chapter, and it's in the middle because it's chapter 31. So, and it's a hard thing. I mean, I want to obviously talk about, your mom's life, her stories, and her antics. I can't wait to hear more. But chapter 31 delves into packing up a life. And that is when we're probably ahead of ourselves of going through their things. And,
yeah.
But you put like the fact that it's not like, I had to get rid of, I had to pack it. You took the time to really, and again, another way that she's with you is like, and you allowed yourself to go down, the sentimental journey of, is that her scent? Or I remember when she wrote that, or look, I can't believe she saved. That's also a gift to have, even though, it's that double-edged sword of, God, this sucks. And look at her things.
Yeah. My father basically relegated that whole to me because he couldn't do it.
Right.
And I mean, it's true what you're saying. I coming across some of the items that I did, it reminded me of the stories that she talked about. And, I had mentioned that stories are kind of just that. They're wispy to a point, and they are not as tangible as it became more. Her stories became more tangible when I came across,
some evidence.
Evidence and photographs. And I mean, it's just, it all became even more real. And by that point, I hadn't even started writing yet. It was all in the memory banks, just waiting to get out. So I mean, that was a very emotional chapter for me to write.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see. So disclaimer. So I'm 60 now. I lost my mom when I was 25 and pregnant with my first daughter. And so 35 years now. And I didn't have, I'll say, the luxury of enjoying the pack up process. It was more like, God, damn it, I can't believe she left me. I'm, here I am pregnant, like not happy at all, obviously. But in my years, I know she's here every day. I talk to her every day. I always say her name. So it's such a process and such a gift that you were able to so quickly, I say, really share her with the world. That's what I love.
I think deep down she would have loved that because she loved talking about all the stories of her. I mean, I remember just a few days before she actually passed, I mean, she would talk to any nurse that she could, and told her about how she used to model and this story and this person she met. It was so cute. And I mean, she was such a flirt too. She'd flirt with the doctors. I mean, and that was her. She had such a light inside her. She was such a character. And, I likened her kind of as a cross between like Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's to a little bit of Moira from Schitt's Creek.
I love that. I love that one because I think we all are, or we want to be a little part of Moira. So start with the wonderful chapter, the title, the Unapologetic Was she a party crasher? Like, who was she? What in the world was going on here?
Yeah. So when she was in her, late 20s, early 30s, she was very good friends with Ron Galella, who is the original, like he's dubbed to be the original paparazzi.
Okay.
Warhol's favorite photographer. I mean, he shot everyone.
Wow.
Everyone. There's a documentary actually on him called Smash His Camera, which is what Jackie O said to her bodyguard because he was incessantly following her. I mean, he's the one that took that photograph of her, that black and white photo with her in the white shirt and her hair is kind of in her very iconic. Yeah. Shot brand. I mean, everyone's. So anyway, so when he was first starting, my mother and he were good friends. They probably dated. Anyway, and he would invite her to all of these movie premieres in New York City. And they were everywhere and everything from like the April and, Paris Ball to like the opening up. I mean, like, Elizabeth Taylor. And I mean, everyone who
back in the day. Sure. Yeah.
And she had an obnoxious amount of confidence. And she was just, she loved to dress to the nine. And granted, she didn't have an extensive budget, but she just found a way, and she was always very resourceful, even till the end, and she lived in a world of glamour. Like she was a fantasist is the best way to describe her. But anyway, so she would go to these parties. I called them the Bonnie and Clyde of party crashing. Although the only shooting was done by the young photographer. She would hide his camera under the table, then go off to look for Sinatra, and just there was a lot of stories that I wanted to share. But yeah, during this time, she became a little famous in her own right. She was written up in the New York Post as this new party crasher on the scene. And, they gave her a nickname. They call her Harlow,
That's hysterical.
And it goes on and on. And so that is sort of what, that was my working title for the book for a long time. I actually I called it Harlow. And it only changed when I had finished the book and I was talking to the people that I had written about in the book. And one of them was one of my roommates in Los Angeles. And, we were reminiscing about how unapologetically herself she was at all times, authentic and all that. And anyway, so I'm like, yeah, she's unapologetically herself. And my roommate stopped me and said, that's what you have to call
title. Yes.
Unapologetic.
Yes.
And at first I was like, no. I've got the title. It's going to be Harlow. But the more I sat with it and thought about it, that that resonated with me. And so I'm grateful for that conversation because I think there's something about that title.
There is definitely something about that title. So she's having a hey-ho time in New York. And then clearly your parents meet in New York?
Yes, they met in New York. And that was another thing too. Like I was so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to talk to my father, and it was like I was getting to know the man behind my father, my whole life was very, private and not very, my mother was always very demonstrative and, outgoing, and my dad was very serious, and he was the grounding force for her. And, they were very yin yang, but they worked very well. But so I'd call him when it was Mother's Day and I had no one else to call, and, got me even closer. And he would tell me these stories about, how they first met. And I was impressed with the detail of his memory. I mean, he knew that she was wearing a pink knit dress when they met. And, the song that was playing when they first, fell in love. And it was incredible. And
that's wonderful.
I feel like everybody can do that though. I mean, all you have to do is just ask
the questions. No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because I had a similar situation where my mother was my best friend and my father, he was supporting a family. The guy went to work and he came home and he went back to work the next day. And my mother was sick a lot. And it was my sister and I, and we were kind of running the house. We would do food shop. We would do a lot of things because she would be in the hospital sometimes for months on end. And, we were what I call just going through the drill. We knew what the drill was, when she got sick. We knew how to spring into action. We knew what needed to be done. So after she passes now, and I remember thinking, I'm like, another reason I was mad at her, I'm like, I'm kind of left with this stranger. I don't know who he is. And he doesn't know who I am. I mean, I'm married, I'm pregnant. He has no idea who I am. And
culture too, though, that the men do that it was right.
Correct. And really, so you have to go through, obviously his grieving process. I mean, they were married and together for 30 something years. And my mother died young. She was 52. My grieving, and everyone really had to do it all at different times. And I, did mine very differently than everybody, whatever it was. But probably 5 years into it, now I have 2 kids and I'm like, I don't even know, I got to get to know this guy. And, I kind of came back into our relationship, not as the baby, not as Steffi. It was, okay, so I'm a woman and I'm a wife and I'm a mother. And so what we have this wonderful 35 years later now, this wonderful relationship that we didn't have growing up because it was, is he always my father? Of course he is. I honestly don't even call him dad very often. We refer to him as the big guy, but we just have these wonderful conversations. I'm still very respectful, but if he's being a dumbass, I'm going to call him out on it. And just as, he will say something with his opinions to me, and it's real. And it's a little, listen, it sucks with not having the mother, believe me, but yet it's a little gift I might not have ever had.
Yeah. I mean, and you know what? It's never too late. It's never too late. Everybody at their own time, maybe he can be there for you easier and he can relate to you more as an adult than maybe.
Correct. Absolutely. Positively. And also hearing his stories. He was here in New York because he lives in Puerto Rico. He was here in New York like 3 years ago. And he just last week turned 88. And we were talking about like what it was like. I have the same commute as he had. We actually, almost go to the same spot, and the traffic back then to what it is now. And just, the things that he worried about. Like I had no idea, it was just, oh, wow. Yeah. The real person.
More, I was going to say, yeah, he becomes more human.
Yes. So, yes. Very much so. Very, very much so. Yeah. So is your dad still in California?
No, he actually moved up to Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my father was married before he met my mother. He actually married at 17, very, very, very young. And they were married for 20 some odd years, 24 years before, marrying my mother. And we had actually 7 children and 2 passed. 2 died as his child, the first and his last. So I have 5 half brothers and sisters, and they're all up. There's a couple up in Washington, and there's a grandchild, and there's a lot of people up there, and it's a really cool. To me, it feels very European. I mean, they're all like this one property, but with like different houses.
The compound that I so desperately want. Yes, yes.
So it was like, I just had this idea, and I ran it by my sister-in-law, and she's like, "Oh my God, we would love to have him." And so I just love the idea of him being surrounded by family and yet having his own privacy, but yet he has a home cooked meal every night, and they get together for birthdays and holidays. And that wouldn't have been the case in Palm Springs. I mean, he was like a shell. I mean, he couldn't even go into the bedroom to go to sleep. He had to sleep on a couch to me, I feel like he has more of a life. And then also my brother's with him. And so, yeah.
So a little fresh start and a great support system.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So how hard was it I'm sure the idea and the stories have to be like coming to a boil in your head. And then you're just going to say, is today's the day? like, I'm sure you're writing little tidbits down. Ooh, that was a good one. And, I'll do voice memos if I want to remember something. And then, when you open that laptop, do you stare for a while or it just comes flowing?
I'll tell you. Yeah. I mean, being anything in the creative realm, you can't just sit down and go, okay, clock in, clock out. I mean, creativity comes to you at all hours of the night. But for me, I actually attribute the fact that I was able to keep going with it to a writers group that I had started. And we originally were planning to meet, I don't know if it was once a month or twice a month, but then when COVID hit, it all became a lot easier to just do it via Zoom and every Saturday. And I submitted something new every week, whether it was even just a tweak to my last piece. And these were all women who, I looked up. I thought they were extremely talented and I valued their opinion. And we all just kind of helped each other along. And so that was very helpful. And also the fact that when I put my mind to something, I just kind of do it.
So you knew this book was going to happen.
I knew by the time I had written a few chapters that it was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to actually publish it for the world, though, because it was so personal. And what I was really concerned with was how my father was going to. My father and my brother, but mainly my father, how he was going to receive it because he's so private. And, in order to tell my mother's story fully, I had to tell, my father's story to an extent and my brother's. And, but my biggest thing was I wanted to do it as authentically as I could, but with as much love as I, authentically, but with love. I remember actually have this in the beginning of my book that I had said, I was telling him that, okay, Dad, this is, I'm done. I'm ready. And, and he's like, well, that's wonderful, sweetheart. And, and I'm like, but I'm scared. And he's like, what do you mean you're scared? What are you scared about? And then I long pause and I just said, well, what you're going to think. And he's like, what, so he essentially gave me this freedom to release. And he's saying, honey, this is your stories, your memories of your mother. And I know you've worked really hard on it. And well, yeah, I'm private, but I'll just have to take that into consideration, and I mean, it is primarily about my mother and me, but, it was nice to get that blessing from him. And then after he read it, he was just like, oh my God, it was so, like you did. I really love how you handled, my brother has some struggle. So he's like, I really love how you handled Sean's story. And, just it was nice.
With love, because you came, you did start and you want to show it from a place of love. And yet if it's life and if it happened, you can't undo it. So here's what happened. Here's how we handled it. And then, we crashed another party.
Yeah. But I didn't know if it was going to just be for me, but I'm grateful that I got the permission, to an extent, quote unquote permission, but I can share it with others because feedback that I've gotten is so heartwarming. I had a conversation with my husband a few nights ago, and he's like, what is it that drives you? Because money doesn't drive me, but we talked about what's your definition of success and this and that. And for me with the book, honestly, when I hear people say, my mother and I were estranged, and after reading your book, it caused me to get back in touch with her. And now we have a really good relationship, or, it's inspired me to do a documentary on my family, or, I have a girlfriend that wrote a very small, kind of like a pamphlet, but it was, about her grandfather, and her grandfather's still alive. And so now the whole family can, see it, including him, and what a tribute. And I don't know, just so much feedback. It's really heartwarming. And,
I think in this day and age, it's lucky with the options of media, not just the book, although I'm a lover of any book. I walk into the bookstore and I can be lost there for hours. But you have again, on the Kindle. You can read it on your phone. I know it's not on Audible yet. I hope you somehow figured that out. I'm a big Audible person, and I love it when it's read.
I just finished the Audible recording,
okay.
so I'm in edits right now. But
excellent. I'm a huge Audible. I love listening, and I love it when the author reads the story because you know what you wrote, and it just brings so much more to it. Really brings it more to life. So even though I'm reading it, I would definitely listen to it on Audible. But I also, it speaks to so many women out there, as you said, some that, still luckily enough have their moms, good or bad. And they can be your best friend or your biggest foe. They can be your biggest critic. I know a lot of people really, and as women get older and you're going through marriage or mothering and you've got those opinions. Now, flip side of motherless daughter, like I didn't have that. It's never good news, but it's different. It's very, very different. Like with friends my age who I look at them and they still have moms that I'm like, you guys are so freaking lucky. This is, it's such a treat.
But then you realize, gosh, if you only knew, I mean, if I would give anything to have those,
exactly.
Those irritations back.
Exactly. And again, it's opinions that they'll always have. But I don't think it ever diminishes, the love for. And sometimes it's just a way of communicating that you don't know if that's all they ever heard. So then that's, people can give what they know. It's hard for them to go over that. But so with your book, so you write this now. And this was in COVID, so this is not that long ago. And how do you, send the email to Amazon and say, hey, put this one on your list?
So I'm a big researcher. So I had some friends that went the self-publishing route. I had some that went, the big publisher, that route. And I talked to both of them, each of them. And for myself, I determined that I didn't want to wait 2 years, before bringing it to market. I didn't want to relinquish any control on it. I wanted to retain all my rights. And I'm a first time publisher too. So I thought, let me do this first, on my own. And I actually essentially, I created my own publishing imprint. So I'll be able to publish future things if I wish under that imprint. Amazon makes it so easy. And then I hate to be a plug for Amazon, but I mean,
right now, be a plug for Amazon because there's a lot of people that want to know how are you getting on Amazon?
And there's different ways. There's, I think, Ingram Spark, and there's a few other platforms. But for me, I knew I wanted to sell it on Amazon, and I love their customer service. I mean, because I literally did everything. I did the manuscript. I did the edit. I mean, I did everything on my own. And there'll be times when you have a question, and you just pick up the phone. They help you. Maybe if one person isn't so help, you call back. But that's kind of how I got through it, and I did a lot. I mean,
they have a publishing department.
Yeah, so it's called KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing.
Ah.
They will help you do your paperback and then your ebook. By help, I mean you do it all, but you upload it, and there's there's assistance to a point, and they have like templates and stuff. But I did my own template anyway. Yeah. After the fact, I discover all these programs where all you do is push a button and it uploads your stuff. Of course, right? And I'm like, cut to 3 months of me like, wait, no, I need that.
But you needed to learn that yourself. Yeah, you definitely needed to pave it, and now there's an easier way, and maybe you'll take that way. Or if you've had a great response with Amazon, then you might stick with what you know, and for the others to come.
Yeah. So that's essentially how I did it.
How did you decide which stories? Because you must have had a lifetime of her stories and of her antics, something tells me. And did more come to life as you were, I'll say, validating, when you like see the picture of her and here she's at this table? You talk about the seating charts at these big events. Did that then make sense and put it more as a clearer picture versus just a story she might have told you when you were younger? How did that go?
I started interviewing people. I interviewed my mother's best friend, Marilyn, which was one of my favorite chapters to write about, their Catskills. I don't know if you ever watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. There's that whole section of her Catskill days. So I kind of had that, vision in my head while I was writing it. Because of the feedback that I was getting from my writers group, they kept saying, we want to know more about you. And I was like kicking and screaming, like, no, this isn't about me. This is a book about my mother. And they're like, yeah, but by knowing you understand your mom more. Anyway, so that was like, I started sprinkling a little bit of that, and they're like, yeah, we want more. So that, a lot of it was feedback that I was getting, but then I started writing, dialogue. I was big on, that you hear it in the writer's world, show, don't tell. So, instead of saying, I don't know, she was sitting on the couch drinking a cup of coffee, instead it's like, you talk about how your body feels on the couch, and then like, you're holding a warmth. So I don't know what, it's just descriptive of what's happening without saying exactly what it is. And then you can do that a lot in dialogue as well. So that was an interesting thing for me, because obviously I wasn't there for, much of the book, her early years, right? But from the stories that I was told, I was able to write as if, I don't know if she said, this particular word over that particular word, but it wasn't about that. It was about getting the gist of, I knew this is what happened to her, so let's put in a little scene. And for me, that made it so much more enjoyable to write, and I think people to read. So
like imagining, her just walking in with that head high as though she belonged, because she did, into whatever the affair was, maybe on the guest list, maybe not, but it looked like fun, damn it. And probably had a great time, and then met other people, and then she gets invited to the next one. What a great concept.
So, and then I would write that as if she's doing that. So it's all her thoughts in her head as it's happening real time. So yeah, that was really fun. And then of course, also in the very beginning, I thought, I don't even know if I have enough to make a book. I only have. And then the more I wrote, the more I remembered, and the more I talked to people, the more it came, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. So that
I just saw something, I think it was on your Instagram, that there was a hotel in Hawaii, her favorite bellhop, So tell us that story. That was actually really neat.
My mother always loved hotels, even in New York City. The Plaza and the St. Just and all of that. The Carlisle, so when she moved to Hawaii, I think also part of her just wanted to kind of be around people from the mainland, because she couldn't relate as much to, I
it's
guess
an adjustment, sure.
She discovered this, it was like her oasis, her Shangri-La, this hotel, and it was truly an incredible time, be just an incredible place. And it catered to everything, all the celebrities and the, prince and princesses. And
so she picked the right place, not the Red Roof Inn or anything. Yeah, no, it was the nice one.
And that was my childhood, my brothers and my childhood. we grew up playing on the beach and, hanging out. I remember playing Go Fish in the lobby with Emmanuel Lewis, or we would go to Sammy Davis Jr.'s kids' birthday parties, there's just like story after story. But I remember, oh gosh, I forget her name, but I'm at that, I can't remember now. I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. But Jane Powell.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So apparently the story is she asked to borrow me and take me to Kahala Mall, which is like, maybe 5-10 minutes away. But what? Like, who does that? And then I think it's just crazy. Like the fact that my mother even allowed her, but that's the crazy, my mother just loved that world so much. She couldn't imagine anything bad happening to me, but oh my gosh. But, Grant, I was returned and unscathed and like totally.
And you went to the mall. Okay.
Yeah. As a child, as an infant, I mean, just so many crazy stories, but yeah. So I write about this and, there were a couple people that were there from the start. One was, I had written about Lloyd. He was there for 50 years. He started as a young teen, and that was his only job. And he retired. And then one of my other friends who I wrote of, he was one of the bellmen. I think this is probably the first that you talked about. Our friend, Todd. And I write a little scene where we're walking in, and she's like, "Hi, handsome," and anyway, so the hotel did a little write up with him, holding the book and just talking about how this hotel is so fabulous, even authors are, kind of thing. And so
that's wonderful. So she definitely sounds like, quite honestly, and it wasn't really about her, even though like you're describing her as very confident and, looking good and pulling it together, but she loved people. And it obviously also seems like she saw people and always probably learned their name, always said their name, which is so important. And, and forget what we might call, she was a little flirty. It probably made the fact that it was a little more than a good morning. And who doesn't want to hear like, "Hey, gorgeous," or I know in this day and age, but okay. Yeah. Especially when you're feeling it there you go. Especially when you're feeling it that day. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, and the thing with her too, is that, yes, she loved glamour and being fabulous and all that stuff, but she was friends with people from all walks of life. She was friends with the bus driver to the maids to the, it didn't matter. She just
knew everybody. We had a very good friend like that who knew everybody and knew everybody's story. And, the joke about Frank, and may he rest in peace, gone too soon, was that if he went out for milk, it would be, or if he just ran in for something, it would be at least 45 minutes because he stopped to talk to the cashier, and then he's going to remember their name, and then he's going to ask about their kid. He knew everybody. He knew everybody.
That was sure. Yeah, there was a scene where, in the very beginning, so she actually didn't learn to drive until she was 40 something years old. So in the very beginning, the early years, she would take the bus to this beautiful hotel, and she was dressed, in her costume jewelry and like all the bags and, the beach chair and all her 2 children. And so, the bus driver knew her. She was like on a clockwork. A bus driver knew schedule. And so one morning she was running behind and he waited for her.
Oh, wow.
And so she remembered this, and she gives him, they gave him Christmas gifts.
Sure.
So
yeah. Sounds like a fun, well-lived life is what it sounds like. So quickly, because I know I've kept you for a little while, your writers group, local people, did you just find them online? How does one connect with that?
That was actually originally from my first memoir class. And then I took another one right after that, but it was from that first class. And so I remember when it ended, we were all kind of like,
I know. Once you bond over something. And that was online also?
No, actually it was before COVID, in person. And one of the girls came up to me and asked if I wanted to, start a group, writers group with her. And, she's like, "I really like to write." And I'm like, "I was just thinking the same thing. I really like yours." Yes, absolutely. And so, we formed a group, and, I think only one girl kind of eventually dropped out. She didn't really have a lot to write, but the rest we stayed on. And actually we just kind of reconnected a couple of days ago online, but we were talking maybe forming a little reunion. But Yeah. So we were all in California. They were all in LA. However, I was the only one in Orange County. And so I was grateful for the Zoom meetups. But yeah. And then during COVID, one moved to stay with family in Rancho Mirage, I think, in near Palm Springs. One went to Texas. Another one moved, like everyone kind of moved away, but yet we were still able to connect.
So. That's the greatest thing about it. It's thank you, Zoom, and every other program that's out there that just keeps us all connected in this crazy
Even
time.
Us.
Exactly. Yeah, even us.
Back in the day, it's usually like, wow, you mean it. It was very more
I
common,
wouldn't even know how to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. A telephone interview? I'm not sure. I wouldn't even begin to know how. So that's.
I just had a doctor's appointment earlier this afternoon, and it was my first telemed, and I'm like, oh, used to going in person, but I was like, this is fantastic. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Follow up. It's so much easier.
It is so much. Yeah, a lot of good has emerged. We've really taught ourselves, how to pivot and just new things for sure. Before I let you go, do you have, and if you do, please share it with us, a favorite story? I know that I'm going to just ask you for one of, I'm sure, a lifetime, but there's got to be a classic.
I mean, I loved writing about her days in the Catskills with Marilyn. So Marilyn was an opener. She was a singer, and so she would open the acts for everyone there. And my mother, they were best friends, and so they would always go together. They wound up hanging out with the band leader. And this is what's so funny. So you had to be 18 to work there, but we're always fibbing about their ages. So they're 16, 17, and they said they were 18. So these are young kids, right? But if they're hanging out with
And this was during the summer, the Catskill season, when people would summer there?
Well, throughout the year, but yeah. I mean, during that era before jet travel was very popular, right? Before that. And so the Catskills was where
it was happening. Mm-hmm.
And actually, essentially, it's also where a lot of the Jewish people went. And the people honed their craft there. And so anyone kind of got their start there. And so she hung out with all these people. And so just a lot of those stories. It was just fun to hear about that through Marilyn, because I hadn't really heard of the details from my mother then. So that was fun to write about. It was fun, yet extremely hard. And when I say, half the time I'm writing, I'm writing through tears.
No, I know for sure. I know that. Yeah. I can only imagine. Imagine. But you mentioned, as far as law of attraction, and I'm going to let this be the last. Do you believe in signs? Does she come to you? Do you call on her? I'm a huge believer in the spirit is there, physically not, but she's with you every day. They're just waiting for you to ask. And is she good at giving signs?
Yeah, she's come to me often, and I write a lot in the last chapter. Actually, I have so many stories. I remember sitting at my desk shortly after she passed, and just kind of, in my head, just kind of asking, hey, it's time to start.
Our biggest question, sure.
Right after that, my iTunes came on, and I don't ever listen to music through my computer, but that just the music part came on, and the song "Cheek to Cheek," the one
right, yeah.
We're together at heaven.
Yeah,
I'm in heaven.
Oh, how wonderful!
And it was perfect for her, because that's the era, and it's she answered my question, and then it just went off. I remember her birthday is March 1st, and that was also the day that my book became available to the public, and it was not supposed to be that date too. So that's a little nod.
No coincidence. I'm sure she had a hand in that. Love.
I had decided I wanted to celebrate her birthday, because I would always go back and visit her on her birthday, and I want to continue to honor her and celebrate her. And so I had a couple of close friends, and we all got together for her birthday. It was, a couple months after she passed. And you know how you set up those group texts that talk about logistics
right,
to see you kind of thing. So I had one of those set up, and, it was such a wonderful evening. We laughed and reminisced and took photos. And anyway, I get back to my car and I just happened to look down at my phone, which was in my possession the whole night. That text stream was on my screen, and I just happened to see there was an additional entry that I had not written, and it was LOL mom.
Stop.
So
she's good. So she's good.
Yeah, she's good. Yeah. So to me, I took that as, she was laughing with us and having a great time, and so happy that, there's that. I'll tell you one more. The night before I left to go back to New York, I was scheduled to leave in the morning, and my husband actually had already left for a business trip, and he and I were going to meet up that weekend. So it was my first time being alone in the house after she had passed. It was my first time really recognizing the silence. Like, how do I explain this? After someone passes, there's a lot of hustle and bustle. There are people coming to you or delivering gifts or hugs or, calls, or, you have to make arrangements for celebration of life, or there's this thing, you have to do that thing, right? There's a lot of that. And then at some point it all stops, and it was like hitting this proverbial wall, and I'm suddenly alone with my thoughts and, just the house. And I remember it vividly. I walk into our kitchen, and there's vases filled with the flowers and people sent, and cards, and then there was this book, this memorial book, where people write down the things that they want to send a memorial. So I hadn't yet had a chance to read it, and I read through everything, and then I came across this entry that my brother had made, and we haven't talked about him much, but again, I mentioned he had struggled. So he always expressed himself so beautifully in his artwork, but he was for the most part quiet, like I call him like the silent observer. And I came to this entry, and it just brought me to my knees almost. It was just so beautiful, and I didn't know those words were in him. And anyway, I did one of those ugly cries where I just all and I all of a sudden I hear this buzzing coming from upstairs, and I laugh now because it's like one of those horror films where the
right. Do not go upstairs. Go out. Get out. Get help. Right.
So, yeah, that's what I did. I'm like, what's that sound? I go upstairs, and of course, I see what it is, and it's my little electric toothbrush just dancing away on the couch. It suddenly turned itself on, and I think maybe, and anyway, so that kept happening. Like the electric toothbrush just out of nowhere would constantly go. But this is what I know, that, listen, everything's energy, right?
Indeed. So, and that's what they go for.
It doesn't go. So, and I think I know that when one passes, they've said that it's easy for them to connect with those that are left behind through electrical devices. And so that's why it's so common that you hear about lights flickering or, things like
and
that.
To get your attention. And it, it's not like they're leaving just a little sticker over here. In the beginning, there has to be something visual or really audible that then makes you turn, and then you say, oh, wow, huh. Oh, I see you. Yeah. Yeah. And always give credit. Those are great examples. All right. I lied. I do want to talk about one really quick thing because I loved it when I was reading about it. And that was the gratitude bowl and the gratitude jar. Talk to me. My favorite thing.
So I have this thing I called, it's like my gratitude jar, my memory. I've done this for years. And so what I'll do is I'll write down something that I was grateful for that day, or I don't know, just a fun memory, something fun we did. And I'll just throw it in the jar. And then at the end of the year, my husband and I will read throughout, the things throughout the year.
That's fun. Yeah.
So my mother, she would always call me for everything and anything. And it was there was always a phone call when somebody passed away, in the like a celebrity.
Oh,
somebody,
a celebrity.
You know,
okay.
Yeah,
You're never going to believe it. Did you hear?
Right. But it was always, she was just so distraught. Like it was like a family member. And I later realized, it's like, these are the people that kind of raised her in a way.
Yeah.
Like she grew up in that era. So of course, like, in the era that she loved so much was slowly changing. But she would always let me know. And I was, and so there was one particular day where she was just like, she's just expressing how she got, she gets sad and depressed, and I'm like, so normal. And I said, Mom, that, I do too. And she's like, you do, she's so innocent too in her ways. It's so sweet. And I said, what helps me get through a sad spell sometimes, I remember all the things that I'm grateful for. And then when you do that, you start to recognize more things to be grateful for. And then I mentioned that I had this gratitude jar that I keep. And anyway, she's like, I kind of like that idea. And I said, well, maybe you should start one, kind of thing. And this was towards the end when she was sort of in and out of the hospital. And one of the things that I came across was her version of it. She had a little gratitude bowl, but it wasn't labeled that or anything. So when I was cleaning up, I just happened to, I'm so glad that I didn't do everything too quickly. And it could have just been trash. I mean, there's like crumpled up pieces of
so intentional you were that you were able to see everything.
Yeah. So I remember pulling out a piece of paper and I opened it up, and one of the first thing I read was Caroline's call today made me happy, or something like that. It was so simple. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And I just kind of looked at each piece of paper, and I suddenly was like, oh my God,
she had one. Oh, I love that story. Cue the tears again. Yeah, and again, the ebbs and flows. It could be just not even the song on the radio. It could be, the perfume, anything, and that's okay. Again, life well lived, and when you miss things that you love.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Okay. So once again, the title of this fantastic book that everyone has to go. Now, let me ask you this, because my book group, we have a couple of months hiatus, but I'm hoping it's my turn next, because I would love to read this for my book group. And then have you thought about being available for book groups and being part of the discussion?
Yeah, I've actually been a part of multiple
books.
So It's already been part of 3 or 4 in the few months that it's been out. And one actually was the most recent one. I don't know, of a very good friend. She was a childhood friend, one of my best friends growing up in Hawaii, Diane Neal, who's played Casey Novak in Law and Order. And she hosted a book club, and that was fun. That was on IG, and we did that, but I was involved with that. But I also, there was a book club in Bainbridge Island where they had me come in as a guest at the very end and talk, and they had questions. And then another one. Anyway, I love doing that. So if you want to do that, I'm happy to.
I'm going to gather my girls together. Absolutely. Consider it done. Not that I'm stalking. I'm just saying consider it done, because it would be a lot of fun, and just to really hear it from your point of view versus what do you think she meant by that? And then you give us that background on it.
To get feedback. I mean, I love knowing like part that touched you and whatnot. And then there, I've heard of, there's a couple people that are mother-daughter groups together.
What a great idea. Love. Oh my goodness. I've kept you long, and I do apologize, but I can keep talking and talking, because it's the greatest topic ever. It really, truly is. I love your face does light up every time you do talk about mom. So just so you know. All right. Name of the book. Go.
The book is called Unapologetic Tales of the Original Party Crasher.
Love. I just have this whole image of all the combinations as you describe. And that is available on Amazon.
Yeah, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook.
And then also on Kindle. And then social, where are we going to find you?
not available on Kindle yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I'll let you know when it is. Yeah, I hope to. But right now it's just paperback and ebook. Social, I'm on all the platforms, Twitter. I'm mainly active on Instagram. And that's been really fun for me too, because I don't have photos in the book. And it was a conscious decision to make because I thought your imagination was so much more powerful. And then if they want to see, I probably post something probably once a day, every other day. I'm pretty active on there. And it'll be like either a photograph of her, with the story. There's always a story or an excerpt. I found videos of her,
Oh, fun.
The book review or little things. So sometimes a lot of it's in like real time too, like how I'm feeling about it today. And so people have said, it's kind of neat because I'm reading the book now and then I can refer to these pages. So yeah, so I have that at Facebook and it's all under my name. It's just Caroline Nadine. I have my middle name in there. So Caroline Nadine Helsing, author. And
okay.
And then
we will be on the lookout.
Yeah. And if you want to go to the website kind of ties everything in together. So it's carolinenadinehelsing.com and that's where you can see everything.
Take all your clicks and find a way. Thank you. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you. And like I say, I can't wait to finish. And then I'm going to rally the book group girls and be like, is it my turn? Because I'm going to cut because I've got an author lined up that we can talk to afterwards.
That'd be to talk to you after you finish.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Absolutely. For sure. It's been very, very enjoyable. And it sucks what happens that we're not here forever, but always remember those good times, remember those memories and keep the memory alive.
Yeah.
It's hard in the beginning to talk about it again without tears streaming, and that's okay. And then eventually other people, it's fun to share the story. It's fun to share her. Thank you for sharing her.
Thank you. And you can do it too. Everyone out there can do it as well, with their own family members or love. If there's in any way, if it inspires you to write your own piece or film or just, not even to put it out.
Document, right.
Document. Yeah. You will be grateful that you have that, down the line.
So good. And on that, I'm going to say thank you again. Good God, you've heard it here. That was great. And you're right. Well, document, talk to, write down, take the picture, write the funny story, interview who's ever still here to hear it from their perspective. And what you're probably going to hear is something maybe different, but it's also fun for them to remember as well. And thank you. All right. So thank you all for listening to this week's episode. I know. Comments, please go to the website. And I want to hear all about it and all of your takeaways, joyfoundhere.com. If you haven't already, please do. I don't know what you're waiting for. We are into this 30-something episodes and counting. So you'll hear us on Apple. You'll hear us on Spotify, iHeart, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We appreciate your subscribe. We appreciate your rating and reviewing. And just always remember the good times. Until next week, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Joy Found Here podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please share it with a friend. And of course, if you haven't already done so, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player. Don't forget to head over to joyfoundhere.com for any questions, comments, and feedback. Until next week, keep your head up and your crown straight. You've got this.